Excellencies, colleagues, friends of the Munich Security Conference and friends of Haiti, a warm welcome to this spotlight. My name is Astrid Irrgang. I'm the head of the Center for International Peace Operations, CIF, in Berlin, and I'm honored and privileged to moderate this panel with an excellence cluster on stage. Warm welcome to the distinguished panelists. I would also like to thank the team of the MSC that they put that topic again on the agenda. They did so in 2024, and last year there was a representative of the US administration here with us, and last year the political and the financial backing for Haiti was very clear. We are in a different situation now, and we are in an even worse situation in Haiti than last year. So there is really a sense of urgency to talk, not only for strategic reasons, but also for humanitarian reasons. And of course, it was the plan of the team of the MSC to have Haiti represented on stage, but unfortunately the former Prime Minister Cornille, on very short notice, had to cancel the trip. Warm wishes to him. I hope he might listen to us. But the region is represented here, and I'm very happy to introduce Erika Moines, the former Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Panama, and now chair of the Adrian Arch Latin America Center's Advisory Council. Welcome. We also have Arnoldo André Tinoco, Minister of Foreign Affairs from Costa Rica, and Volker Türk, High Commissioner of the United Nations for Human Rights, who will have to leave us a little earlier. Well, the data we get from Haiti are really devastating. We have over 50% of the population in desperate needs, over 1 million people internally displaced, and criminal gangs are said to control 85% of the capital, Port-au-Prince, not to talk about gender-based violence. So my first question to this panel, and don't worry, warm up already, I will include you quite soon, is from your respective perspective and through your lens of work, how would you describe the current situation? Which picture do you want to share? And if you like, you may start.
Thank you, and thank you for the opportunity, and I share your view that I congratulate the organizers for putting this and not letting this slide and not be a topic, given how many other fronts we have in the global stage. This remains a very important one, and if I may be honest, I am still puzzled, given that it is so close to us, including the US, how it doesn't remain much more top of mind. The situation is as dire and as difficult from any perspective, starting from violence on children, and you've seen the reports that come out lately, which are absolutely terrifying. But the idea or the management on the streets, there is no state, there is no control. There is a temporary situation and sort of a de facto core the group management of the day-to-day, which is very much overrun by the gangs, and there's the G9 and the G20 and the paramilitary groups, I mean, all over. So even for states, because I saw, for instance, Kenya interested in helping, when you're trying to help Haiti right now, it's even hard to know who you're helping, because sending, you know, like you could say, well, we need some form of guns or whatever to control for the police to be actually policing. Chances are those guns are never going to end up in the correct place or in the correct hands. So the situation is really, really dire, but I welcome and I motivate thinkers around that we need to promote and push for a policy solution before coming to terms, right? So we don't have a solution yet in the international community. I think there's been a lot of interest on different ideas, but we have not come to terms to what is that final and solution that could terminate the de facto situation in place. And until we have that, we can continue on this permanent sort of stage. You know, I'm involved in a think tank, and we all in the think tank worlds will analyze, but we don't dissect to the point, and we all need to come together to what does that proposal look like. Thank you.
Thank you. Minister, would you like to continue?
Haiti is a failed state. The structures of a republic or a state do not exist. There is no executive branch working, no judicial branch working, and no legislative branch working. As you said, 85% is controlled by gangs, and that's the wild west, if you want, where the gangs, by the use of force, violence, and threat, dominate parts of the country and fight each other, thereby, of course, killing people. 5,000 a year is not a number, it's increasing. The pressure for the population is such that people are migrating as they can. In Costa Rica, in Central America, Panama, Costa Rica, and the other countries, we see it daily with the migration flows. Out of the, in 23, 500,000 migrants we had. Last year, 300,000. 5 to 6% are from Haiti. That march from Panama, Costa Rica, all the way up, or try to march to the U.S. Now the reverse flow is taking place because of the changes in the U.S. policy. But as Erika was saying, children are being killed, women are being raped, private property is being violated. There is no peace in that part of the island. The country suffering the most of it is the Dominican Republic, the direct neighbor of Haiti, and it's the Dominican Republic that takes always the initiative to make the world aware of what's happening there. The UN has its efforts, but through the presence of force organized by Kenya and other countries helping, like El Salvador, but that has not resulted yet in positive effects. The international community is not willing so far to finance the intervention, the big intervention the island needs.
Thank you. Volker.
Look, I would actually like to start with a different perspective on Haiti, because in the sphere of human rights, Haiti has a very, very cherished place. We often talk about the French Revolution, the American Revolution, but we never talk about the Haitian Revolution, and it was a human rights revolution. It was a revolution that, in fact, the Haitians are very proud of it, because it was against slavery, it was against racism, it was against colonialism, and it was precisely the fight for freedoms. And frankly, if one goes into the history, you know, a number of countries have played, unfortunately, a very, very unfortunate role in even suppressing it and not letting Haiti get out of a very, very dire situation that they have lived through decades. And within Haiti, you have, I think, because when we talk about all the negativity around it that obviously exists, we also need to bear in mind the incredible creativity, incredible culture of this population. I mean, we all know Basquiat. Basquiat was Haitian, just to give you one example. And when it comes to music, when it comes to art, when it comes to food, when it comes to all the fantastic things that are part of the culture of this country and of the people. So it is, of course, a huge tragedy, what is happening. And I think the international community has tried many times to deal with the governance issues that you have described. I think it's clear that the country needs our support. It needs it in a comprehensive way. The Security Council has pronounced itself. I mean, there was an arms embargo because, you know, the gangs, if you look at what the gangs have, they have some of the most modern equipment, some of the most modern arms that you can possibly imagine. If you look at the Haitian police, well, it's not the case. I mean, their armament is definitely not at all in sync with what they are facing. I was in Haiti. It was precisely, and I'm glad that the Munich Security Conference focuses on this country. I was in Haiti in 23 precisely because I thought it was important to put the spotlight on what is otherwise a forgotten crisis. And it is still a forgotten crisis. So the arms embargo is an important element. The other one is the sanctions. But the arms embargo has to be enforced. I think we still have, I mean, there's not one single arm that is produced in Haiti. It comes from, well, mostly from the US. It comes from also through the Dominican Republic, and people are benefiting from this trafficking in arms. And that really needs to, that's where it has to stop. Then there's a sanctions regime that was coming through from the Security Council. Again, this sanction regime needs to work, and it needs to work much better to identify who are these people behind the gangs, who has an interest in the chaotic situation that we currently find in Haiti, because there are obviously interests behind all of this. And we need to trigger, and we need to know where these interests lie, and we need to go into those and follow the flow of the financing, follow the ones who are behind it. And there are sanctions that are coming from the Security Council, so they should be implemented as well. Of course, there's the political process. It has to be an inclusive one. And this is for the Haitians themselves, and they need to work through that. And the international community needs to help, especially the police, and the building up of a rule of law justice system so that it can actually deal with the massive security challenges that people face.
Mm-hmm. Thank you especially for mentioning the civil society and the power that is in the country. We will talk about that a little later. I would like to stay a little bit with you as you're representing the UN, and you mentioned there are multiple international players on the ground. There are a lot of NGOs, and there is a debate at the moment in New York about turning the Kenyan-led mission into a full UN peacekeeping operation. What are your thoughts about that? Is that likely with regard to Russia, China in the Security Council and the US freezing money? What's your assessment?
Look, the Haitian history of external involvement has, as you know, been a very mixed one. And when you discuss with them, I mean, I had a chance 2 years ago to have this discussion with some of them, including with civil society members. I mean, some were so desperate, they said, of course, we need support. Then we had the Security Council resolution that allowed for the multinational security, or the MSS, I don't know the exact...
Multilateral security support mission.
Support mission, voilà.
MMS.
MSS. And I think that was then created and it took off, but not enough. I mean, that's what is needed, whether it comes under the UN, well, it is related, of course, to the UN auspices, or it is something separate, or I think that's what is the most important. In whatever way it's organized is a different thing. But I do believe that the history of the past was such where a lot of segments within the Haitian society would not want again UN troops to do the type of job that they themselves are supposed to be doing. And I think it is important to support, and that's why it is this emphasis on support. It's in support of the Haitian law enforcement agencies themselves that they need to act. And that's a difficult one. Because, you know, you need to speak Creole, you need to speak the local language in order to be able to do the type of policing that is required.
Mm-hmm. Erika, in my preparation to that panel, I learned that you have a great record for championing female and civilian society. We heard about a dysfunctional state and at the same time of the strength of civilians. So what can be done in your perspective to somehow lift the local powers on the ground? and the powers in the region?
I think I would like to be more optimist, but I want to push back for a second on some of your remarks, because I think, as Arnoldo was saying, and some people don't like to hear Haiti called a failed state, I think the solution comes from the recognition of where we are. When you mention, for instance, sanctions, and you consider where they are and the amount of gangs and multiple players and what you describe as an accurate, absolute picture, where you have a guy with a machine gun on one side, the one on the gang, and the police on the other with one that maybe has one bullet. That's literally the situation. It's absolutely untenable. So I think that coming up with small sort of like precise cuts, it's so hard. The women on the civil society, they're mortified to even go. Like, we worked a lot on getting donations to them. And I remember seeing like the pictures when the donations were being served to the communities. The women couldn't get them because it would be gangs all over, harnessing like the rice and everything. It is just so hard to be able to empower when you're in that kind of dire situation, that I think, going back to my earlier point, it's a more comprehensive to give the platform. I mean, there is one good, the ability that we have nowadays of the internet connection and being able makes it a lot easier, I think, for voices to be heard and for communities. But I feel like the time is ripe to sort of recognize where they are and trying to come up with a much more inclusive, which has some bumps on the road, because yes, there is sort of like, well, they need to ask for it, and who do you get to ask for it? I mean, like all this legalities on one hand, but you have to counterbalance what is the truth or the reality, and how can you work, or who you empower without endangering essentially the women, the civil society, whomever that you want to help out.
Minister, I would like to stay a bit longer at the topic of the gangs. How can, or what role could those gangs play in the moment where you really want to stabilize somehow the country and interrupt the violence, and how can any investment in future be encouraged?
There are two ways to approach it, as always. Look what happened in El Salvador, where you have 80,000 prisoners coming from the Salvadorian gangs in a huge modern prison. I don't know if forever. That's the decision El Salvador took, and it's now a pacified country, rebuilding itself. That's one way to go. But you cannot imprison a whole country. The other way is to try to demilitarize the country. As Mr. Turk said, it's a weaponized country. And slowly work out a political dialogue and situation with all stakeholders of the country, but to be, as Erica was saying, just take consciousness of that you will need to re-educate one or two generations. You need to start up at school level in the changing of a paradigm for the people of Haiti, and inflecting to them, again, hope, and giving to them the educational tools to develop a new society. And that will take 30 or 60 years to happen. You need to start from the ground zero to rebuild a society. And that's a very tough, long-term assignment that the world needs to do, because it's an island that because of history, is in this situation now in this century. So it's hard decisions, but they have to be implemented, the one or the other way.
I know you have to leave quite soon, I think. One last question to you with regard to the freezed money of the US administration and the huge amount of money that they gave to the country. What can be done? Which talks do you see? How can that be compensated?
I mean, I hope that the decision makers in the current State Department realize how much it is in their own security interest to make sure that this money is again dispersed and that they see Haiti. I mean, it is so close to the US. I mean, it's in the security interest of the US to ensure that whatever can be done is being done. And this goes, by the way, also for not just as a support to the security support force, but also to USAID funding and development funding and humanitarian funding, because the situation is very, very dire. So yes, I hope that whoever takes these decisions these days realizes that it is not just in Haitians' interest, but also in US interest to do that.
Good luck for all advocacy, and thank you that you've been here. I have one last question to Erika, and then I would like to open to the panelists. There is an election planned. How do you see that? Is that too early? Is that manageable?
There have been several up until now, and most of them have not panned out the way. So I think the election plan goes hand in hand with taking control on the streets of what's happening. Otherwise, you have one after the other. So I think, I do think that it's an evidence of a failed international community. This is not on the UN or any particular. As an international community, we all have a responsibility that we're not meeting up the expectation that should be. I think that there's a degree of racism involved and no natural resources. If either of the two was different, I think also the response would have been different. And these are the hard and tough questions that we need to pose ourselves and come to what's happening there and why are we not talking about it, why we're not coming to terms to how we can help. Because this hasn't, like they just celebrated the anniversary, it's the anniversary of the earthquake, the 15 years. And, this is a country that on top of everything that it is, ever so often gets this massive natural disasters. And I think, as it was clearly well pointed out, for those who do not see the value, there is also the threat, and why at least this is in the very interest, in their security interest, because before the current one that we're facing, that it is mostly the at least the top nationality is Venezuelan. 3 years ago, the top nationality of migrants was Haitians. And it could come back again. And it becomes, again, a problem for many that are not fixated on solving this issue. So this is a situation that the longer that you try to put off or not provide the resources can come back quickly and turn into a massive problem.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I look to the panel, and I know that on your desk, Jenna, there is a lot going on. Please. And if you could introduce your name and your institution, that would be great.
Thank you so much. My name is Jenna Russo. I work at the International Peace Institute in New York. I have a question. So I really agree that the long-term solution for Haiti has to be political, and there's a lot that goes into development and education, and also, frankly, dealing with trauma. But my question is, in the short term, there seems to be a consensus that some type of a robust posture is needed to provide at least a modicum of stability for people to even be able to move around. And so in that, maybe a recommendation for a stronger sort of police, very armed police or militarized force, but yet when you look at the gangs, so many of the gang members are children and youth. And so then when we think about what counter-gang operations look like, and in fact, I would have been interested to hear from Mr. Turk about this, what is the risk of also the need to really protect the children and the youth who themselves have rights to be protected? And how do you sort of differentiate between those who are maybe simultaneously perpetrators and victims of the gangs? And how do we think about countering gangs while also protecting the massive amounts of children and youth that are in the mix?
Who would like to answer?
You're the children's expert.
That's an incredibly important point. And I think, pushing back a little bit on my former colleague, I don't think that the Bukele way is the way at all for this. There is no way of sending to prison and never releasing all the children and people in Haiti. Beyond what's happening there and being a violation of human rights, because more importantly, there is a youth context here that is a lot more difficult. But this is not the only region in the world where we're facing sort of already a second generation of radicalized that you need to deal with. So I don't think that that's impossible, but the first thing is to take control of the situation. You can't even manage something that you have no control of. And I can go as petty or simple as most embassies have closed in Haiti. Like, there is no presence of anybody. Very few of the organizations, I remember some of the organizations that we were talking to, they didn't want to go because they didn't want their representatives to be exposed to some of the diseases, the water. I mean, it is really challenging, the situation that needs to be addressed. So I go, it's like, it's really, really basic when you think about some of the communities and what they're struggling with.
I agree. I mean, peace has to come back. There is no peace there. No peace at the villages, no peace at the cities, no peace in the rural areas. No one is secure there. You need first to control that so you can start building up. And these 14-year-old boys and girls, or 12-year-old ones, or 16-year-old ones, have been now trained to be murderers. To revert that will be a huge process on educational level, psychological level, psychiatric level. You need that as well.
So when I took it right, the Kenyan-led mission lacked in the beginning really of capacities, of contributions. Any more interest in the region to contribute to that mission? Because clearly you need the bodies on the ground who, in a way, help to have a little space of security. And then I fully agree with you, Jenna, then it's very important to learn from other examples how you can incentivize people from coming back from being in a gang to a more civilized life. Because in the end, nobody really wants to be in those gangs. Can you share some thoughts from your country and what you see in the other Caribbean countries? And please think about other questions.
Well, it's amazing to see what's the expenditure of the world in armaments, for instance, the trillions of dollars, and the community not being able to devote a very small portion of it for this purpose. Money is around, but it has not been prioritized by the countries. It's not only the region, it's also the developed world that could be taking a look to it.
I was going to add so part of not being top of mind is because it's slipping away from the news cycle. You don't hear as much about it. You don't think as much about it. So part of what we can do on the outside is to take that mission and empower, and I'm working, but I know a lot of others, like for instance on children or on women, to give them voices, to keep the international community sort of involved and engaged, so money actually flows to be helping. Because when you put out the hat and everybody, there have been some interest, and Canada at some point was very vocal, then a little bit less, then France was a little bit interested, then UK, US. But so we need to sort of forget who's the owner of the plan, but rather sort of come to terms that there is a plan that needs to be implemented. CARICOM, most countries are very eager and trying to, but again, there is no sort of master plan that is ready and there to be implemented.
I've seen another question, please.
Good evening. I'm Thibault Rougin from the Peace Institute in Tübingen. I totally agree that it's really hilarious when you see the budget, which is also spent in armaments and defense these days, and which are missing in really humanitarian cases. But I also wanted to address a point which was addressed, I think, in a documentary 2015, which was called Poverty, Inc., which somehow also showed that money alone is not doing the work. In this documentary, there was really the case of Haiti was really also showed us that this huge amount also of food supply also somehow destroyed local incentives also of being self-entrepreneurial, and also especially in the agriculture, but also in the manufacturing area. So how or was enough done also to somehow support entrepreneurship and also somehow support that Haiti somehow can stand more on their feet? And if not, is there more to be done, and in which way?
I think I just agree with you. I mean, of course there is more to be done, and the budget point is, and we're here listening mostly about increments in the defense budget, not in the humanitarian budget, and that's not just here. In all regions, the focus seems to be in the opposite way of dealing with the most basic needs and all these peace processes that seem to be stalled. So I think this is just a fight to be had, and that we all need to be very vocal and sort of showcase what's happening, and that there can be done. And it's a little bit of the shaming game, if you like, of calling out for what it is in order to, they have us, that's it. It's the international community, it's the ones who are here that we've decided not to pay attention to something else, but decided to come and talk about Haiti. Not many, but some. And so they have us, and it's on us to make sure that more and more people engage, so it becomes a top priority.
You've mentioned that it is important to scout the people on the ground and to empower them so that the ownership for the process grows bottom up. Is there any stakeholder landscape you know about that knows about the resources on the ground, the people, the talents?
Yeah, so I think Minister mentioned that, for instance, Dominican Republic, who are the main neighbors, have offered themselves to map out sort of the key stakeholders on both the sort of more aggressive side, if you like, the criminal side, but also on the civil society. The UN has done a lot. OAS also sent missions to map out the stakeholders. So there is work on that area that just needs to be expanded and leveraged in a way that becomes very meaningful.
You have the case that the dominant economic families live abroad from Haiti. Most of them live in Miami or other places. And they just fly in and out. And behind all of this, there is always a business. There is someone making money out of it. It's the drug trafficking gangs, and it's the armed trafficking gangs making a business out of it. So you have also to address internationally those organizations and cut them off of their business.
it's an excellent idea, but very difficult to fulfill. But speaking about the Haitian population that is living abroad, do we know anything about their engagement in bringing stability back to the country? Is there any research on that, Jenna? Mm-hmm. Did I oversee any question? No. Erika.
No, I mean, there are Haitians that live abroad that are engaged, of course, and that they want to help. I think it's just there is no roadmap, and they do send money back, just as it happens in many other. I think it's one of the main income streams of the country as of now. So you have to have mapped out essentially migrants that live and now are in okay means compare the migrant situation. It has been very much linked to the various earthquakes, with some population now living in Chile, for instance, where there was a mass migration that settled there. So those are all options of ways that you can leverage activism to sort of, as I was saying, we need to sort of create this network of people that are interested. At some point, Bill Clinton was involved. We need to sort of revive, because if it was bad before, now it's terrible. So we can't let it fall off the news cycle, as I mentioned.
There is an interesting podcast by Sanam Anderlini, who is here at the MSc, and she moderated a town hall about the backlash on gender equality that was really moving. And that podcast is called If I Would Be in Charge. If I would be in charge, what would you do? What would be the recommendation?
I would intervene militarily the island. I would bring order, law and order. I would reform all the institutions, the Constitution. I would make it a practical approach, pragmatic, to benefit the communities. And after having control of the situation from a security point of view, I would, of course, start with the educational system and training system of the people so they can research in a prosperous society. But this would be in a 50-year plan.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would. I think that the last part is probably the most important part, which is the 15-year or the long-term view. Mm-hmm. Nothing that you think that will solve it in a year or 6 months is going to work out. It's just not. In addition to taking charge or control, there is an empowerment / grassroots on a community basis. You can't just plug in, fix it, and then leave. That's just not going to happen. So a commitment on a long-term basis of any solution is the key of solving it. Nothing that we think that is going to be sort of, precise, surgical, of trying to get in, decriminalize, and get out. It's just not going to work.
Mm-hmm. As we're here at the MSc and talking about geopolitics, and your guests now and witness how Europe is somehow, well, if I put it mildly, somehow shock frozen about all the crises that are going on, specific attention to Ukraine, of course, Middle East, the shift in the US. And now we have a German election close by. I would love you to give, an idea to especially the German population, why vote for multilateral crisis management, why this is really important, and a problem and a conflict like Haiti should stay on the agenda, although we are all so busy with different things. Why does it matter?
I'm a multilateralist at heart. I believe that is the solution, the global order as we know it worked for a while, and it's sort of in a bit of disarray or chaos, if you like. So it's prime and ripe for a new system, and all Germans need to care about what that new order looks like, because if you're not part of shaping that reality, it will be shaped for you. So we all need to take part, and then we also have a role in showcasing sort of the realities, the harsh realities in some. So when you're taking into account how to shape this new system that involves the health, and we had failed situations when it came to the pandemic and how it was managed, failure in all these fronts, on the financial front, et cetera. So what do we do about it? And this is the point, I think, to all Germans, that they need to be front and center as all the other countries, involving in what this new world order looks like and what are the framework in order to be more equitable, to actually, promote the development that we all deserve.
It's the principle of shared responsibility that we all have in every country, every human being, and the solidarity principle that brings us together to solve specific acute situations in the world. You cannot just be blind and omit them, because sooner or later the boomerang effect will be in your house.
Thank you. I look into the audience. I don't see any question left. Is there any comment you would like to, anything you would like to feedback to the panel? Well, then it's on me to thank you very, very much for being here, to sharing your thoughts, and to bringing the attention of the audience and everybody who listened to us back to that conflict of Haiti. And I would wish that next year the Munich security team brings it again back on the agenda, and that we have a little better picture to paint. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us here.
Thank you.